October 14th, 1942, Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. Just before dawn, the rain stops. In the shallow slit of a foxhole carved into red Guadalcanal mud, a U.S. Marine sniper presses his cheek against a rifle stock worn smooth by salt and sweat. He is 20-something, exhausted beyond words, and awake for the same reason every man on this island is awake: survival. Around him the jungle exhales, wet leaves, rotting wood, insects clicking like distant machinery. Somewhere beyond the palms, Japanese artillery has gone quiet after a night of bombardment that shattered the shoreline and left the air smelling of burned cordite and crushed coral. He reaches into his pocket and touches something cold and familiar. Not a photograph, not a letter from home. A dented tin ration can, empty now, its label long gone. Trash, by any normal measure. Here nothing is trash. The Marine lifts his eyes and studies the tree line through his scope. Guadalcanal is not Europe. There are no clean sight lines, no distant horizons. Everything here is close, suffocating, alive. Every shadow could be a rifle barrel. Every bird that explodes into flight could be the last warning a man ever gets. This island matters more than it looks on any map. 2 months earlier, in August 1942, the United States landed here in its first major offensive against Imperial Japan. Guadalcanal is a hinge of the Pacific War. Control it, and the sea lanes between America and Australia remain open. Lose it, and Japan tightens its grip across the Southern Ocean. Tokyo knows this. Washington knows this. And the men crouched in mud know it in their bones. For weeks, Japanese forces have tried to retake the island by night assaults, jungle infiltrations, and relentless sniper fire. The sniper war here is personal, intimate, and merciless. Men disappear without a sound. Helmets split. Conversations end mid-sentence. Fear becomes routine. The Marine breathes slowly, counting seconds between heartbeats. He has already learned that firing is the easy part. Waiting is what breaks men. Somewhere ahead, hidden in vines and darkness, Japanese soldiers are moving, probing, testing, watching. They are disciplined, patient, and deadly. And they are watching the Americans just as closely. The Marine shifts the tin can slightly, angling it toward a thin gap in the foliage. He is not performing a trick. He is solving a problem the only way this island allows, by improvisation, by nerve, by accepting that if he is wrong, he will never know it. In the Pacific, survival belongs to the man who sees first. And on this morning, as light begins to creep through the jungle canopy, when Marine is about to change the balance of an invisible war, 5 days, that will echo through sniper lore, battlefield reports, and whispered stories long after the gunfire fades. October 15th, 1942, Henderson Field Perimeter, Guadalcanal. The jungle never reveals itself all at once. It offers fragments, movement without shape, sound without source. A snapped twig, a breath that isn't yours. The Marine eases the empty soup can onto the end of a thin vine, nudging it forward until it catches a slice of morning light. It glints just enough to matter. On Guadalcanal, reflection is a language. Steel answers steel. Japanese snipers have been working this sector for days, methodical and lethal. They don't waste rounds. They wait for helmets, for cigarette smoke, for the smallest lapse in discipline. By mid-October, American units have learned that lifting your head for even a second can cost a life. The Marine does not lift his head. He waits. Minutes stretch. Sweat slides down his spine despite the cool dawn air. Then movement. A pause too deliberate to be nature. Somewhere in the green wall ahead, a Japanese sniper sees the glint and makes a calculation of his own. A helmet, perhaps. A careless Marine. A clean shot. The crack of a rifle splits the quiet. The bullet punches through the soup can and snaps the vine apart. Metal spins away into the undergrowth. In the same instant before the echo dies, the Marine fires. His round is not hurried. It is placed. Across the narrow killing ground, a body collapses backward into leaves and shadow. No shout, no warning. Just the dull sound of flesh meeting earth. The Marine does not move, not yet. On Guadalcanal, one shot is never one man. Japanese sniper doctrine rarely works alone. A second rifle is often watching the first, waiting for retaliation. The Marine counts silently, eyes scanning the scope's edge. 10 seconds, 20. Another flicker. Another correction. Another breath held. The soup can trick works because it does not promise safety, it promises information. It forces the enemy to speak first. By nightfall, 3 Japanese snipers are dead in this sector alone. Their positions mapped not by intelligence reports or aerial photos, but by patience and discarded trash. Word spreads quietly along the Marine lines. Not a boast, a technique. October 15 turns into October 16. The jungle absorbs the bodies. The shelling resumes, and the sniper war deepens. Japanese patrols probe closer now, angry, cautious. They begin targeting anything that shines: canteens, bayonets, watches. The Marine removes everything reflective from his gear, except what he wants them to see. With each exchange, the balance shifts. Japanese snipers who once hunted freely now hesitate. And hesitation in a place like Guadalcanal is fatal. Over the next days, reports will circulate, unofficial counts, whispered numbers passed between exhausted men. 1 Marine, 1 sector, dozens of confirmed kills. Some will later claim a staggering total. Over 100 enemy soldiers neutralized in less than a week. Whether the number is exact matters less than the effect. The Japanese know something has changed. And as night falls again on Henderson Field, the Marine settles deeper into his hide, preparing the next illusion, aware that the enemy is learning, adapting and closing in. October 16th to 17, 1942, jungle east of Henderson Field. By the 4th night, the jungle has learned his shape. Leaves are cut away with care, not broken. Mud is packed into fabric to kill scent. The Marine has not slept more than minutes at a time, but fatigue sharpens him rather than dulls him now. Every sense is tuned to imbalance, the wrong sound, the wrong silence. Japanese forces respond the only way they know how: adaptation through pressure. Snipers begin changing positions after every shot. They crawl instead of walking. They stop firing altogether, letting patrols draw American fire instead. The jungle fills with ghosts, men who are present but unseen, rifles cradled like extensions of their own bodies. The Marine notices the change immediately. On the afternoon of October 16th, he watches a patrol move through elephant grass with unnatural discipline. No chatter, no clatter of gear. This is not a supply unit. These men are hunting him. He does not fire. Instead, he shifts the soup can again, this time lower, closer, almost careless. A mistake no trained sniper should make. It takes nearly an hour before someone accepts the invitation. When the shot comes, it is tighter, more controlled. The bullet misses the can by inches. Too careful! The Marine tracks the muzzle flash backward, tracing geometry through leaves and branches. He fires once. The patrol freezes, not from fear, from realization. They understand now that they are not dealing with luck or volume fire. They are facing a man who waits for them to think they've learned. That night, Japanese infantry launches a localized assault, testing the perimeter with grenades and bayonets. The jungle erupts into shouting automatic fire and flares that turn the canopy white. In the chaos, the sniper war pauses, but the Marine remains still, unmoving, letting the storm pass around him. By morning, bodies lie tangled in roots and vines. Some fell to machine guns. Others never made a sound. October 17th brings rain, heavy, relentless, flattening the jungle and muting footsteps. It should favor movement. Instead, it favors stillness. The Marine makes his longest shot yet, through rain and steam, using a helmet strap hung deliberately from a branch. The Japanese sniper fires first. He always fires first now. By sunset, whispers spread through both lines. American Marines talk about a ghost rifle watching the jungle. Japanese units begin avoiding certain corridors entirely, rerouting patrols miles out of their way. Control of ground is no longer measured in yards, but in fear. And fear, once planted, grows fast. The Marine cleans his rifle with slow, practiced motions as darkness returns. He knows the enemy will not accept this imbalance for long. A counter-sniper team will come. Better trained, better armed. Men who specialize in killing men like him. The soup can rest beside him in the mud, bent and perforated, still useful. The next phase will be different. October 18, 1942, the Kunai grass line, Guadalcanal. The counter-snipers arrive before sunrise. They do not announce themselves with careless shots or probing fire. There is no test glint, no answering muzzle flash. Instead, the jungle goes unnaturally quiet, a silence so complete it presses on the ears. To the Marine, that silence is confirmation enough. These men are professionals. Japanese counter-sniper doctrine favors patience over aggression. They observe for hours, sometimes days, learning habits, rhythms, the subtle ways a man betrays himself without realizing it. Somewhere out there, trained eyes are studying the same ground the Marine has mastered. He changes nothing, and that is deliberate. The soup can remains where it was yesterday, rusted and dull now, offering only the faintest suggestion of reflection. It is no longer bait. It is a memory, a marker. The real trap is the Marine himself, frozen in a posture that can be held for hours, breathing so shallow his chest barely moves. Late morning. Heat builds. Sweat pools behind his knees. Then a sound, not a shot, a click. A rifle safety. It is close, too close. The Marine does not turn his head. He slides his eyes left, millimeter by millimeter. Through a lattice of grass, he catches it, a sleeve wrapped in camouflage cloth, stitched differently than the line infantry. A Japanese sniper prone, inching forward with the confidence of a man who believes he has already won. The Marine waits until the man's focus narrows completely. One shot, no echo. The jungle swallows it whole. But this time, the kill does not bring relief. Within minutes, rounds begin cracking through his hide from multiple angles. Leaves shred, dirt explodes. The counter-sniper team responds exactly as trained, triangulating the shot, saturating the position. The Marine rolls, crawls, disappears, abandoning the hide he has used for days. The soup can is left behind on purpose. Let them think he died there. He moves for nearly 2 hours without standing, sliding through mud and roots, changing direction whenever the terrain allows. He builds a new position, not where he wants to shoot, but where he wants to be seen not shooting. By dusk, Japanese fire dies down. They believe the threat is neutralized. It is the most dangerous moment of all. From his new hide, the Marine watches Japanese soldiers inspect the abandoned position. One kneels beside the soup can, lifting it with curiosity. Another removes his helmet, wiping sweat from his brow. The Marine exhales. 2 shots. 2 bodies fall into the grass. Panic erupts. Orders shouted. Rifles swing wildly into the jungle. But the Marine is already gone again, folding into shadow, carrying with him the knowledge that the enemy has crossed from confidence into desperation. That night, Japanese command. Logs will note an unexplained spike in casualties along the eastern approach. Units stalled, morale shaken, movement restricted by an unseen rifle. The soup can trick has evolved. It is no longer just deception. It is domination. And with each passing hour, the cost in blood and fear continues to rise. October 19, 1942, east of the Lunga River, Guadalcanal. By the 6th day, the jungle belongs to no one. Rain falls in short, violent bursts, turning paths into traps and foxholes into graves. The Marine has lost track of time measured in hours. He measures it now in heartbeats between shots, in the weight of cartridges left in his pouch, in the ache that settles deep into bone and never leaves. Japanese command responds with numbers. Infantry squads move in overlapping sweeps, not to hunt a single sniper, but to erase the idea that any American can move unseen. Bayonets are fixed. Grenades are thrown into likely hides without warning. The jungle becomes loud again, angry, blind. The Marine watches them pass. He no longer uses the soup can openly. The enemy has learned its shape, its promise. Instead, he uses what the island gives him, broken glass from a shattered signal lamp, the wet curve of a helmet left where it shouldn't be, even a canteen half buried in mud. Each reflection is placed to suggest panic, retreat, carelessness. Each one draws fire. Each shot reveals a position. By mid-morning, Japanese casualties mount quietly, reported not as losses to a sniper, but as unexplained contact. Officers argue. Runners are sent. Orders change twice in an hour. Men begin firing at shadows, at birds, at anything that might be watching. Fear spreads faster than bullets. At one point, the Marine watches a Japanese squad refuse to advance across a 10-yard clearing. They wait, they argue. Finally, one man runs. He does not make it 3 steps. The Marine feels no triumph, only the dull certainty that this is what the war has become here. Men reduced to movement and consequence, stripped of names and futures by fractions of a second. By afternoon, his rifle barrel is too hot to touch bare-handed. He wraps it in cloth torn from his own sleeve. Ammunition runs low. He counts each round now with intention. No wasted shots. No warnings. Somewhere behind him, American Marines are holding the line, unaware of the invisible wall being built in front of them. Japanese units meant to probe the perimeter never arrive. Attacks are delayed. Routes are abandoned. The front does not move, but it stabilizes. As night falls on October 19th, the firing slows. The jungle exhales again, heavy and wet. The Marine finally allows himself a sip of water, his hands trembling as the adrenaline drains away. He knows the number being whispered now. Dozens, then more. A figure growing with each sunrise. Whether it will ever be confirmed hardly matters. The effect is real, written in altered maps and cancelled assaults. But the cost is catching up to him. His body is failing, his eyes burn, and somewhere out there, the enemy is preparing something final, something meant not to scare, but to end this. The soup can lies crushed in the mud of an abandoned hide, no longer needed. The next day will decide whether this story ends in silence or survival. October 20th, 1942, pre-dawn, Guadalcanal interior. The final hunt begins in the dark. Sometime after midnight, the Marine hears it. Not footsteps, not voices, but something far more dangerous, coordination. Short whistles, a rustle that moves in arcs instead of lines. The Japanese are no longer searching for a sniper. They are encircling one. This is doctrine taken to its extreme. Veteran infantry, not scouts, advancing low and slow, flushing ground with grenades and fire, forcing any survivor to move. Somewhere in that tightening ring is a kill team, waiting for the moment he breaks cover. The Marine does not wait for that moment. He moves first. Abandoning his hide under cover of rain, he slips downhill toward a ravine choked with vines and fallen timber. It is bad ground for shooting, but perfect for disappearing. He leaves behind signs of panic on purpose, a dropped cartridge, a scuffed patch of mud, the faintest suggestion of a retreat. The Japanese take the bait. Grenades explode where he was, tearing the jungle apart. Rifles chatter into empty darkness. The ring collapses inward, confident now, aggressive. From the ravine, the Marine fires once, then twice, from a position no one expects. 2 soldiers fall, not from distance, but from proximity. The shock is immediate. Orders break down. Units hesitate, unsure which direction death is coming from. In that hesitation, the Marine slips again, circling behind the sweep, turning hunters into silhouettes against their own flares. This is the most dangerous shooting of all, close, fast, no time for correction. By first light, the jungle is littered with the evidence of a night gone wrong. Japanese units withdraw in fragments, dragging wounded, leaving equipment behind. The encirclement has failed, but the Marine is finished. Not dead, emptied. He reaches American lines just after sunrise, boots soaked, hands shaking uncontrollably. Medics try to speak to him. He does not answer at first. His hearing is gone in one ear. His eyes refuse to focus. Only when an officer asks how many he got does he finally react. He shrugs. The number will come later, compiled from reports, patrol finds, enemy dead counted in places no assault ever reached. Some will say 112 in 5 days. Others will argue it was fewer or more. The Marine never corrects them, because numbers cannot measure what actually happened on Guadalcanal. They cannot measure the attacks that never came, the men who lived because an enemy was afraid to move, the line that held when it should have broken. By October 20th, the sniper war in this sector is over. Japanese forces shift tactics, pulling back from ground they once contested nightly. The jungle grows quiet again, but it is a quiet built on memory. And somewhere in the mud, a crushed soup can rust away, having done its work. October 21-24, 1942, U.S. Marine Lines, Guadalcanal. The war does not pause to acknowledge what has happened. On October 24, Japanese artillery resumes its nightly rhythm. Shells walking in from the jungle toward Henderson Field with mechanical indifference. Planes scream overhead. Men die in ways that leave no room for legend. Yet something has changed along the eastern approaches. The silence holds. Patrols report open ground where there had once been constant contact. Listening posts hear insects, not whispers. For the first time in weeks, Marines sleep in stretches longer than an hour. The line breathes. The sniper is ordered rearward, away from the jungle that nearly consumed him. His rifle is taken for inspection. His hands still shake when he tries to light a cigarette. No one interviews him formally. There is no ceremony. Guadalcanal is not a place that has time for stories. But stories form anyway. They move through tents and foxholes at night, reshaped with every telling. A Marine who never missed. A ghost who fired once and vanished. A trick with a soup can that made Japanese snipers shoot themselves dead. The tale grows larger than the man who lived it. Japanese intelligence notices the shift as well. Captured documents and later accounts will reveal concern over unusual sniper effectiveness. In mid-October, units are warned. Patrol routes are altered. Officers instruct men to avoid reflective surfaces altogether. In some areas, snipers are pulled back entirely, reassigned to defensive duty. Fear, once introduced, has proved difficult to remove. For the Marine, recovery is slow and incomplete. His hearing never fully returns. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by remembered sounds that no longer exist. He is reassigned away from frontline sniper work, not as punishment but necessity. The soup can story follows him anyway. Years later, historians will argue the numbers. 112 confirmed kills in 5 days. Impossible, some will say. Jungle combat is too chaotic. Confirmations too unreliable. Others will point to Japanese casualty spikes and abandoned sectors and say, the count may not be far off. But even among skeptics, one thing remains undisputed: the effect. On Guadalcanal, the sniper war was never about statistics. It was about denying the enemy confidence, about turning movement into a liability and hesitation into a weapon. That lesson does not stay on the island. It travels into training manuals, into sniper doctrine, into the quiet understanding that deception can be as lethal as marksmanship, that a simple object placed with intent can change the behavior of an entire force. The Pacific War grinds on. Guadalcanal will not be secured until February 1943, after months of blood, disease, and exhaustion. But for a brief window in October, one Marine and one idea helped bend the jungle to American will, not through noise, through silence. 1943-1944, beyond Guadalcanal. War has a way of erasing names while preserving methods. By the time Guadalcanal fades into the background of the Pacific Campaign, the Marine who once ruled a stretch of jungle with a rifle and a soup can has already been absorbed back into the machinery of war. He is transferred, then transferred again. His story is not written down in any official citation. It doesn't need to be. What survives is the idea. In training areas far from the Solomon Islands, instructors begin emphasizing something new to young snipers and scouts: deception before dominance. Draw the enemy's eye, force him to reveal himself, make him shoot first and regret it. The lesson is never labeled with a name, but it carries the unmistakable DNA of Guadalcanal. Across the Pacific, Japanese forces feel the shift. In New Guinea, on Bougainville. On the approach to the Philippines, American patrols move differently now. Snipers are used not just to kill, but to shape terrain, to freeze entire sections of jungle through uncertainty alone. Japanese units respond with caution that borders on paralysis, haunted by experiences they cannot fully explain. The psychological battlefield expands. For the Marine, memory becomes heavier than gear ever was. He hears the jungle in places where there are only streets. Reflections still catch his eye. He avoids sunlight glinting off windows, off chrome, off anything that reminds him how close death always was. When asked about Guadalcanal, he keeps answers short. He does not correct exaggerated numbers, nor does he confirm them. The truth is too narrow, too personal to survive repetition. What he remembers instead are moments. The man who lifted the soup can from the mud with curiosity. The pause before a shot, when two lives balanced on a fraction of a second. The silence after, when the jungle accepted another body. By 1944, the Pacific War has grown enormous. Armadas, island chains, thousands of aircraft. Individual actions vanish into the scale of it all. Yet the essence of sniper warfare remains unchanged, one mind against another, separated by distance, bound by patience. Long after the war ends, veterans will trade stories in bars and reunion halls. Some will swear they heard of a Marine on Guadalcanal who killed over 100 men with a trick and a rifle. Others will laugh it off as jungle myth. Both will be partly right. Because the real legacy of the soup can was never the number of dead. It was the realization that in modern war, perception can be weaponized, and that sometimes the smallest object on the battlefield can cast the longest shadow. Post-Guadalcanal, the long shadow of October 1942. The war moved on, but Guadalcanal did not. The island's mud, its shattered trees, its wet canopy, remained alive in the memory of one Marine, the man who had spent 5 days shaping fear itself. Home was supposed to be a refuge. Instead, it became a place haunted by echoes. Every glint of sunlight off glass or chrome startled him. Every distant gunshot in newsreels or training exercises drew his gaze instinctively toward the horizon. He walked through cities, streets crowded with people, yet he saw only patterns of concealment and movement, imagining the enemy lurking behind every corner. Sleep was fragmented. Dreams were jungles filled with shadows that moved with intent. He tried to leave the war behind, but the jungle had left its mark deeper than medals or scars ever could. Yet outside his personal torment, the impact of that week in mid-October spread quietly but inexorably. Marine instructors, far from Guadalcanal, began emphasizing the subtle art of deception. They told young snipers not just to shoot, but to think, to manipulate, to force the enemy into mistakes without firing a single round. Reflections of cans, helmets, broken glass, small objects placed deliberately became training tools, borrowed directly from the lessons of a jungle no longer remembered by most. Even Japanese soldiers, decades later, recalled zones of Guadalcanal where the air itself seemed lethal, where patrols froze, where hesitation replaced initiative. They did not know the Marine's name. They did not know the soup can, but they remembered fear. The invisible pressure of being hunted by someone who could vanish at will, who could turn the jungle itself into a weapon. Historians would debate the numbers for years. 112? Fewer? More? Records were incomplete, deaths unverified. But the legacy was clear: a single man, armed with discipline, patience, and a handful of tricks, could bend the behavior of an entire enemy force. And for the Marine himself, that legacy was both gift and curse. The battlefield had long since vanished beneath city streets, but the sights, sounds, and reflexes of those 5 days never did. Every shadow was potential death. Every reflection could be a rifle. The soup can lay rusting in the mud of memory, yet its lesson echoed louder than any artillery. The war had moved on, but he could not. And in that silent, haunted space, he understood something permanent. Sometimes the deadliest weapon was not a gun. It was the mind of a man who could see the battlefield differently than anyone else. By the time the war in the Pacific had moved on to New Guinea, the Philippines, and eventually Okinawa, the jungle of Guadalcanal had already claimed its dead and left the living with memories that would last a lifetime. The Marine, who had turned a dented soup can into a weapon of fear, was no longer on the front lines. He returned home unseen, unsung, carrying the invisible weight of the week that had bent an enemy's actions without ever being formally recorded. In the years after the war, he walked among civilians who had never seen a battlefield. The noise of city streets, the glare of sunlight on metal, the randomness of life, all of it reminded him of the jungle. Each day brought reminders of the tiny decisions that had kept him alive and had made hundreds of others hesitate, falter, or fall. Sleep remained fragmented. Reflexes stayed sharp. The battlefield never truly ended. Meanwhile, Guadalcanal itself became more than an island. It became a lesson. Military instructors in the United States began teaching snipers that victory was as much about manipulation as marksmanship. Lessons drawn from one Marine's ingenuity, waiting, observing, shaping perception, and forcing the enemy to act first, were codified into doctrine. Simple objects, a helmet, a can, a glint of metal, were taught not as decoration, but as tools of psychological warfare. Japanese post-war accounts would recount zones of Guadalcanal that seemed cursed. Patrols froze. Men refused to lift their heads. Fear moved like an invisible barricade across the island. No single sniper was named, no single artifact preserved. But the effect endured. Guadalcanal would later be remembered for its brutal campaigns, its amphibious landings, its air battles. And yet, in a quiet corner of history, one Marine had demonstrated something enduring. The battlefield is as much a landscape of the mind as it is of trees and mud. Numbers could be debated, stories exaggerated or dismissed. 112 kills in 5 days, perhaps. But the real truth was not in counting bodies. It was in controlling fear, shaping movement and bending perception. The soup can, crushed and rusted in the mud, had become a symbol, not of death, not of heroism, but of ingenuity, patience, and the human. Mind's power to turn even the smallest tool into a force that can influence the course of battle. And decades later, as documentaries, history books, and oral accounts retold Guadalcanal, that lesson remained. Sometimes survival and sometimes victory depends not on the loudest weapon, but the quietest, smartest, most patient choice a man can make. The jungle, the rifle, and the can had vanished physically, but in the minds of those who remembered or studied the Marines week in October 1942, their echoes were eternal.